Yesterday I had a comment about whether you should play with both hands on the same keyboard. Yes, you can do that, but it depends on the organ. This one doesn't do it really well. If I was to play that way, what happens is the bass notes are much louder than the treble notes, and it drowns them out. So the melody is drowned out by the chords. I mean, that'd be okay if you had somebody singing along playing lead and they're carrying the melody, but when you're doing a solo thing, it sounds funny when a song doesn't have the melody. The reason it does that is just simply the way this organ is designed. The tones come from essentially a square wave generator, which has a lot of harmonics, and then the tabs add filters to reduce some of those harmonics to shape into what they want to do. And what that does, the filters drop off the treble, and of course, well, as they go higher and higher up the keyboard, more and more treble gets reduced. So it's not really in keeping with how natural instruments would play. I mean, yes, with other instruments, the volume has a peak where in the middle it's louder than the bass and the treble, but there's the actual rate that things drop off is more appreciable. When it comes to pipe organs, the installers will actually voice the organ and they adjust those sort of things to suit the room it's in. With a modern electronic synthetic organ, you can do that with some of them as well. This one's 1980s vintage, doesn't have that option. So I'll give a demonstration of that, and I'll do a bit on one keyboard and then both together. One of the reasons we do play with two different keyboards is you can have different sounds on each. So rather than the same sound doing everything, you can have more variation. Now on a pipe organ, playing really chords with both hands can sound nice because, well, they're designed well. This thing is not designed in that sort of manner, and it's pretty much orientated for you to do left hand here, right hand there. Hence why the keyboards are staggered this way, because, well, it's kind of harder to play like that. So this is middle C, this is middle C on both keyboards. They've just got a different range, and the pedal range from memory is there. Anyway, so if I was to play something that shouldn't get me copyright crap on YouTube, some classical stuff. The chords are very strong compared to melody. I'm not sure how well this will come across the phone, but if I do this the way the electronic organ is suggesting you play it, the melody is stronger than the chords, and that's adjustable. I've done that on purpose. I deliberately turn the chord volume down a little bit, or as much as possible, so it's not as dominant. And also, if I want to take my hands off to change settings, it's not quite so noticeable that I've stopped playing the chords. If I do another one, apologies if people who really want that played properly. I'm only doing that from memory, from what I can remember from the Walt Disney Fantasia film, never having seen any music for it. But you may have noticed, if the microphone's good enough on the phone, how the bass dominates the treble. That's as I've explained, that's partly with filtering. It's also to do with the speaker system. There's a great big huge woofer in here, and the cabinet has a resonance to it. And there's some there's woofers about yay big, and then there's a full range about yay big, and then there's some tweeters about yay big. And I don't think they're really balanced as how the output comes from each of them. It's just put in without any volume controls to each speaker. There's only a basic crossover as well to limit bass going into the treble speakers, just a capacitor. There's no coils and filters. Or have the same sort of thing with the pedal. The pedals have their own volume control, so you can adjust how loud you want the bass pedals to sound compared to everything else. And again, that's to do with how the voices sound to start off, but also the resonance of the cabinet puts the boom in the bass. In the previous room, I think D and D sharp used to boom really badly on the bass. I've shifted rooms and now I get a rather bad boom around B flat. And you do notice that that it stands out too much, and there's nothing you really can do about that short of modifying the organ, that or the room that you're in, which is even harder to do. I think I've probably covered about everything I can think of to say with that. Thanks. I did think of a couple more things to add. I mean, apart from regarding playing with both hands on the keyboard, you'll have noticed tone wheel organs, the old Hammond B3s, quite happily do that, and they are voiced. You can adjust the level of each tone wheel. You've got the drawbars to start off with, which give you a user adjustment, but in the factory they can adjust the pickups, and they don't do the filtering in the same way that these organs do on a tone wheel. The actual waveform, the shape and the sound of each tone wheel is designed in the shape of the tone wheel, whereas in this type of organ they use a master generator with usually a square wave or a very rough output, and then knock the corners off it literally with filters, and they're all frequency dependent. So when you take some of the treble off on this note, the same filter takes more of the treble off on this note, and the same filter will take even more of the treble off on this note. So the treble disappears as you go up and down the keyboard. The other thing is, because that way that filtering is done, if I switch on the 8-foot flute, this is piano pitch. That doesn't mean it sounds like a piano, but that's the same fundamental note. So if that's 440 on the piano, this is 440 hertz on this organ. So it's talking about the fundamental pitch. Now, on this organ, like a lot of electronic organs, that's very plain sounding note, rather lacking in bass and other harmonics, and we add other things to it to make it sound better or more interesting. But that again is lacking rather bass. So organs tend to have the 16-foot flute, which is 1 octave down, added on top. So now you're playing two notes at the same time essentially. So, but what you do notice then is that's rather grunty and growly and not a pleasant sound. I mean, if you're into distortion, yes, but if you're into playing backing for nice sounding stuff, that's So the tendency with electronic organs is to play 1 octave up, which sounds nicer. But because we've added a tone from 1 octave down, you're essentially playing 2 octaves at once. And you can say the same for pianos. When you hit a note on the piano, there's not just a fundamental note, there's harmonics and the other strings resonate. So it's not just a very simple sine wave, there's upper and lower harmonics. So there's a bunch of related frequencies going on at once. So where you play on the keyboard is going to depend on what voices you're using. And related to that, and I can show it the filtering too, if I play piano pitch here with an 8 flute, if I have a flute an octave up and play an octave down, that's the same note, but it doesn't sound the same. It sounds brighter. Conversely, if I play an octave up using a voice from an octave down, I'm again playing middle C. That sounds more mellow. And that's because the way the tones are generated from a square wave that is filtered down. And as I said before, as you go up the keyboard, more filtering is applied to that voice. That's why they mellow out. And that's another reason a lot of people play up, an octave up, because I can play an octave down, or the same pitches, and they're mellower. They don't bite at you so much. And for a lot of us, we prefer that slightly mellow sound. If you play a Hammond tone wheel, you get right up to the top. You can overdrive. They've got a tube amplifier, so you can overdrive them like you do with a guitar amplifier. If you want to play distortion effects, you can do that on purpose, and because it's a VAV amplifier, it sounds nicer than overdriving a transistor amplifier. But they also, the Hammonds, or most electronic organs have the same thing. As you go up the keyboard, they run out of notes. So if I just put on the highest pitch, doesn't play, no, grotty contact, and it started repeating those. So you go, that's called foldback. And the reason it's doing that is you can't actually play a higher pitch than that, so it just repeats the pitch. And they do the same with the Hammond organs, because if you went high, it'd be dog whistled, you couldn't hear it. So as you go up the keyboard, some of the voices would drop out, which then would get quieter as you went up the keyboard. But if you play a voice from an octave down, it all combines together. And when you're playing complex chords, it doesn't sound as obvious as what I've done there. So I'd like to put a few voices on. It's very obvious I'm still going up the keyboard because some of the other voices carry on up, other ones don't. Now on some organs they do the same on the bass. The bass can't go so low, so they fold back that way. Lost my train of thought. One of the more obvious situations where you might notice that feedback is a whiter shade of pale. That bit at the end on the Hammond organ where they do the... I've just completely stuffed it up. I'll try again. Doesn't sound the same in my organ as theirs because they have that... the foldback is different from my pitches, so as you're going down, different voices are cutting in and out, whereas on mine it's just a couple of the... I don't think the 4-flute flute even does have no foldback, so I don't get that. So, depending on the organ that you have, where you play certain things, you'll get different sounds, and that's one of the reasons why played on the Hammond B3 or the C3, whiter shade of pale, has that very distinctive chord sequence, and at the crescendo of a whiter shade of pale. One of the other things that affects playing both hands on the keyboard, same keyboard, is this organ has what's called 8-note polyphony. What that means is no matter what the voice, it can only play 8 notes at once. As I tried to play a 9th note, it turned off one of the other ones. Now if you're just playing major chords, there's only 6 notes at once, not a problem. If you start playing 7th chords, you're adding, playing 4 notes with both hands, and that's the total it can play. If you start doing other complex chords plus melody as well, you run out of notes to play. And if you do use the sustain, now as you go down the keyboard, it's got to be able to play 8 notes at once. And of course, well, with the sustain on, when you let go of that one and start playing that one, they're both still playing, so that's 2 notes, not 1. Now, if you did it really fast, the sound down the keyboard, on some organs you will notice some of the notes click off. This organ tries to hide that effect by having a short sustain, so the note will decay away before you hear it click off.